paying 100 for a Japanese booster box when it should cost 40 is now suddenly like, okay, but another 24% on top of it isn't. Today, we're going to be talking about the tariff situation. I don't know if you guys have seen, but the US is imposing tariffs all across the world. I'm sure you've seen it. That includes Japan. It's about 24%. We're going to talk about Team Rocket, a set that you guys probably already know about. It is the Japanese version of Destined Rivals. We're going to talk about Japanese Pokemon cards in general, because I saw a tweet this morning, which I thought was kind of funny, and it came from Mystic Ribs. Now, this isn't like meant to be a call out or a drama thing. It's not. We're talking about what they said, and it had to do with the tariff. So Mystic put a tweet up this morning, said, tariffs are about to crush the Japanese Pokemon card market. The only way to find sealed product for a reasonable price at the moment. Things are about to get even more expensive. They made this tweet in reference to the tariffs that are getting imposed. So basically, if you are importing from the US, there is this tariff that is going to be imposed at 24%. And obviously, Japanese Pokemon cards come from Japan. Who would have thought? Which means that as an imported good, a tariff is going to get slapped on top of it, and it's probably going to get 24% more expensive than it was before. So Mystic put this tweet up, basically alluding to that, saying that's just going to get worse. The one thing I thought was kind of like silly about this was that he said the only way to find sealed product for a reasonable price at the moment. But if you've been collecting Japanese Pokemon cards and you've been in this space, you would know that for at least like the last 6 to 8 months, and even beyond that, but especially the last 6 to 8 months, you haven't been able to reasonably find Japanese product at good prices. The prices that you've been paying have already been pumped up beyond what they should be. When I say what you should be paying, I mean retail price. Now, there are a multitude of reasons why. It's not just as simple as the store wants to make more money, so they're just charging like these ridiculous prices. That is part of it. At the end of the day, a business wants to make money. But in the how to buy a Japanese Pokemon card video that I made around about November, I spoke a lot about all the different distribution lines and basically nodes, right? The manufacturer, they send them to distributors who then send them to stores, those stores sometimes acting as middlemen and then exporting them out to the US, and then you buy them from a US-based store. Along the way, everybody has to take their cut. And that is why the cards have gotten so expensive along the way, and it's all kind of been normalized. I saw that tweet and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I had thoughts, right? And these are kind of thoughts that I've had for a while about Japanese Pokemon cards, because I do think it's really funny that all of a sudden the standard has changed, and that paying 100 for a Japanese booster box when it should cost 40 is now suddenly like, okay, but another 24% on top of it isn't. Because at the end of the day, right, the stuff retails for 40, and I understand that you do have to import it. If you're in Europe, you probably have to pay VAT on it. There are shipping costs, right? But even once you factor all of those little bits and pieces in, you're probably paying close to 50 to 60 USD, right? And you know that the money is just getting absorbed by actual logistics, like work, you know, shipping. The only one that isn't really are the fees, but you are in control, and you're not paying all these different people along the line that aren't actually making it any easier for you to get the stuff. Because before resellers, before reshippers, you were able to just buy Japanese Pokemon cards from Japan. You could go to Play Asia, Hobby Genki, you know, Army even used to stock them, and you could buy cases, cartons, and they were cheap. Sometimes you'd get them below retail price. You'd get them at wholesale price or close to. Somewhere along the way, that all changed, and resellers got involved and made it significantly harder for you to get these cards. Distributors, i.e. Japanese stores, are backdooring to the US because they will blindly pay whatever they ask, and they will. Resellers, and especially rip and shippers, are so dependent on Japanese Pokemon cards as a revenue source because you can't get English cards, that they will literally just pay whatever these middlemen or distributors are asking. These middlemen, the people that are shipping the Japanese Pokemon cards out of Japan, have all the power. No one along the line is saying no. Some people messaged me, some stores that resell Japanese Pokemon cards in Australia messaged me and said, hey, I'm not actually stocking this. And I was like, base, right? Because at some point for it to change, you gotta make a move. If nobody makes a move, nothing will ever change. So those middlemen, they've got all the resellers by the balls. They've had them by the squeezing, right? The tama. Because they saw the US stores buying this stuff for $30 a box and then selling it for 80 or 100, and we're like, wait, why aren't I just doing that? I should be making that profit. And it makes sense. Why would they just watch resellers, people on Sneaker Dunk, rip and shippers make all that extra money from this stuff when they could just make the money themselves, right? And so along the way, the model got normalized. Most customers don't even know that they're paying 2 or 3 times retail, or most are just like okay with it. Is this victim blaming? right? I'm gonna come up with a new term, customer blaming. As a customer, if you partake in reselling by buying off resellers, you are enabling the whole situation. So even as a collector, at some point, you gotta take a step back and say no. So this is why like a lot of us, and I've been getting this message a lot lately, people saying I am no longer collecting because I just can't partake in it right now. I can't afford it, or I'm not gonna support it anymore. And that's the correct stance to take if you want to see the hobby continue to thrive or like grow, right? Because if you don't, then you normalize these crazy prices. The price of entry is too high, and eventually people stop collecting the cards, which is terrible if you're a reseller, right? Or you're someone that's trying to facilitate the ease of selling Japanese Pokemon cards, because that's an argument that I see from resellers a lot. It's terrible because eventually your customer base goes away because they're just like, okay, why am I going to do this? It's too expensive, right? It's a headache and I'm not doing this. Nishi, this is why I stopped buying nearly 3 years ago. Michi, I stopped a long time ago. I'm sure more people, if I ask in the chat, are going to say that they stopped, but I get it, right? I only opened 2 and I've got 1 more sealed because I got 3 retail. That was it. And I wanted to open more, but I couldn't justify it. I wanted to buy a Heatwave Arena. You know, the price is in Australia. It's like 220 Australian per box. And I'm just like, I'm not doing that. Why would I spend so much on 1 box, right? It doesn't make stupid, right? And the stock situation is an absolute disaster in Japan. Getting Rocket in Japan, it's lottery only right now, or pre-order it, okay? It's insane. And then on top of that, you got people that are encouraging others to start a Japanese Pokemon card business, knowing that the situation is so cooked, knowing that it's not as simple as just applying to a distributor, getting your business ticked off and authorized, and then fantastic, now you have access to distribution. No, you need to find somebody that is flipping and reselling this stuff as a middleman in Japan. You need to negotiate and talk to them and build that friendship, right? And it's sketchy, it's weird, right? Like encouraging people to start a business based on that is basically inviting more people into this broken machine that is founded on fear and greed, essentially. Kaiga says, I'm stopping now. Brensei lives in Japan. He says, I'm out. Asteri, I only buy Emma boxes. Japan you want is the worst, I'll pay. Nakuda, I don't collect much anymore. I'm on One Piece. There's less stock problems. And the situation is still stupid there too. Catback says, I barely buy anything. Formula, I only buy old cards now. I have a lot of catching up to do. To cap it all off, right? Knowing that all this stuff is already 2-3 times retail, now it's going to go up potentially another 24% because of these tariffs, as we established a little bit earlier in the stream. If you are a US-based store and you are importing Japanese Pokemon cards, you as the US-based store will now have to pay a tariff of 24%. So the price just went up. Blendy, put the price just went up gif in. If you're in the US and you're importing from Japan, you will now have to pay 24% on top of whatever it is you paid because the tariff gets imposed onto you. Which is why I said that I highly doubt people will continue buying at 4 times retail price. You know, if you're already paying 3 times retail price, why would you pay another 24% and put it to 4? That's just ridiculous. Okay, we're gonna look at some of the prices of Team Rocket in a second. And when you see them, like, you're gonna fall out of your chair if you haven't. I find it really difficult to feel sorry for stores who have like tied their livelihood and their entire income around Japanese Pokemon cards. I think selling Japanese Pokemon cards, in fact, I think selling Pokemon cards, period, is a broken business model that only the ones at the very, very top can actually succeed and thrive from. Everything below that has to fight hard and has to play dirty and has to do stuff like mystery packs, ripping ships, right? Sales, giveaways, whatever you want to name it, right? Paid discords. They need to diversify in ways that are not conducive to the collecting space, that ultimately just hurt it. And this is why a lot of the time you'll hear me say stuff like, if you do this stuff, you're not a Pokemon fan. And the reason why I say that is because if you actually liked the thing that you claim to like, you wouldn't actively hurt it by doing these things. I know deep down you probably do like it to some extent, but my argument, right, my reasoning is that if you actually really liked it, like truly liked it, you wouldn't do something that hurts it. That, for me, a lot of the time, people that say they love Pokemon, but then at the same time will sell and facilitate this nonsense, these shenanigans, this 2, 3, 4 times retail. You've already seen like all the stuff with, is it MJ Holdings and the stuff that's been happening with English and how the main distributor is basically selling this stuff through shell companies, right? You can already see that there's just like, there's no standards, there's no policy there, there's no structure, there's no rules, right? Or governance to just make sure that this operates fairly for people. It's a broken system. Most of us just kind of came to terms with this years ago. Like we just like accepted that this was just a thing. Well, we all stopped paying like the exorbitant prices. I've done it once in my entire life. The one time I did it, held against me by the reseller as a gotcha, which is crazy. So I never did that again. Most collectors kind of just like accepted this and then networked, made friends, joined private or personal discords that weren't paid. Our Discord is this kind of place where you make friends or you know or learn how to buy stuff from Japan without getting sucked into all of this stuff, right? So most collectors kind of just came to terms with this. But yeah, at the end, the most venom I put into this was, you won't see me feeling bad for anybody who tied their livelihood to reselling. Time to reap what you sow. And it is time to reap what you sow, because ultimately, reselling Japanese Pokemon cards was a get-rich-quick scheme. In 2021 and 2022, I saw so many people just pop up out of nowhere. Some that were small and big now, that would sell 25 or 30 USD booster boxes. 2021, you could buy stuff like Miracle Twins for 25 USD, okay? And I would see people sell that then from the US, from their US-based store for 75 USD. And that was just straight up 3 times, right? They weren't paying 60 USD, right? They weren't paying 50 USD and then had to put a 25% or 30% markup to turn a profit. No. They were paying 25 USD. They may have been actually paying less. If I could buy it for 25 USD and then pay a little bit for shipping, can you imagine what they were paying if they were buying it in bulk? At the start, this was just an easy 2, 3, 4 infinite money hack because people didn't know. That's why a lot of my early videos, you would see me be like, the retail price is 5,550 yen, right? You get 30 packs, you get 1 SR. And the reason why I kept doing that was because I was trying to combat not so much the misinformation or the obfuscation of information where resellers were purposely hiding the actual legitimate price of these booster boxes because they were just trying to 2 or 3 or 4 times easily because it wasn't in their interest. If you're a store and you're trying to get yourself going, right? Japanese Pokemon cards were a great way to do it because nobody knew what was inside them. Nobody knew what the actual retail price was. And 70 USD for a Japanese box looked better than 80, 100 or 120 USD for an English box. Stores were doing that because they were trying to diversify. Those stores couldn't sell English cards. So they said, okay, I can't sell English cards. That's the only thing I'm selling. What else can I do? Okay, I'll diversify. I'll sell Japanese Pokemon cards. But they didn't do it in a way that was sustainable. They didn't put the 20% markup. They put 200% markup on it, right? So they just went for the greed straight away. And now the whole thing is falling apart. Great in the short term, especially if you're at the top. But long term, do you really see this being sustainable over another 10 years, right? Or even like the short term, right? Because when you look at the prices of these sets, the left here is retail, 5,400, right? But then you look at what Japan is reselling it at, and Japan's reselling it at this because this has now become the global worldwide price that's established. 34,800 yen, right? That's in yen. So we'll look at Sneaker Dunk. One booster box of this for 388 Australian dollars. That's fucking crazy, right? And I know this is just Sneaker Dunk and it's a small sample. You actually, if you go to checkout, right, get this box here, right? On top of the fees I gotta pay, it ends up being $503. So it's fucked up, right? The whole thing's there's no, now I'm swearing. There's just no shot though that anybody is realistically going to pay this, right? But there might also be people that will pay it. I know this is Sneaker Dunk, right? I know that there will probably be people that facilitate this. I know this is Sneaker Dunk. So if I go to just Google shopping, because I don't want to put a US reseller in this, because if I do, fucking big trouble, right? Big trouble for J-Love. Oh, you called my business, my livelihood. Oh, I'm going to feed my family. Fucking fuck off, dude. Happy for you and your family and your life, but also what you're doing is but even just looking here, $305, $320, right? $308, $500, $326. Big W with the Blood Moon Ursaluna coming in fucking clutch. I got the Jumbo too, and I sit it there on the table. That's what I'm talking about. $355, $388. That's Sneaker Dunk again, you know? Actually crazy. So that is why when Mystic put this up, I was like, please, let's call a spade, right? That is why I took not so much issue, and again, not personally, and I know that sounds like I'm trying to like pussyfoot calling out Mystic. I'm not, and I'll message Mystic because we speak, right? But I did take issue with this. I thought this was unclear, right, and vague. Stores have this opportunity to now say, well, the reason why Team Rocket is so expensive is because of the tariffs. It's the tariffs, right? But the tariffs are only 24% only, right? It's easy for them to say that as an excuse and say, oh, the tariffs have pushed the price up. The price just went up because of that. Don't blame me. This also pissed me off, but this is like the mentality that people are carrying into reselling and flipping and shipping right now. And it's anti-consumer and then automatically anti-collector. And it's annoying, right? 24% Japan tariff starting April 9. Please no poo-poo talk if you don't know what you're saying. So like it's already started, right? One case equals 12 box, 5,400 shipped. Yes, 450 a box. Any tariffs will be covered by me. Of course they, what? The price just went up. Please no poo-poo talk while I smear shit all over your face and tell you it's moisturizer. You know, this is the attitude that has just been normalized by resellers. Granted, not all resellers and stores are talking like this, but it's this smug attitude and this arrogance that it's like I said, hey, I got a family to feed. I got a business to run. Not my fault. If you don't like it, don't buy it, move on. But that's just how it is. You know, I'm keeping it real with you. I'm keeping it 100, you know, this is just the reality. And it's at the end of the day, it's a want, not a need. So if you don't like it, move on. That's the kind of culture we're bringing into the world. Oh, okay. That's the kind of attitude that we're bringing into society. Fantastic. Really going to do wonders for the generations that come through. Hey, don't like it. Don't buy it, move on. No conversation, no like, hey, maybe you probably shouldn't sell it. Maybe just like, don't facilitate it, you know, do your bit, pull back. Everything was kind of chill before you guys started doing this, you know? Everybody made their bit along the way through the chain, but there was no greed. There was no, I need to make 30 or 40 or 50%. There was just, I'm just going to take my 10%. I'm just going to take my bit and life will go on. And yeah, I can't make 10 grand a month from it, but I can make 4 US, you know, that seems reasonable. A lot of people don't know this because they're new, and that's fine. Like, you're new, you're not aware of it, but that is how it was. I have the receipts. I can dig them out if I need to. All right, this is from an invoice, 8th of February, 2021. So the Logan Paul stuff had happened. The hype train was well and truly underway. I was thriving as a up and coming new Pokemon card streamer. It was definitely popular, but what did I buy? I bought Chorbaku Impact, so Super Explosive Impact, Lugia on the front, right? Less than retail, 1 box. Should have bought fucking 15. Wouldn't be here streaming to you bums. Kidding. Forbidden Light, 2 booster boxes, 4,000 yen. Sky Legend, 3 booster boxes, 4,000 yen. And then I paid another 6,600 yen shipping for 6 boxes. And that's how I used to do it. I'd be like, yeah, I'll pay 1,000 yen shipping per box. These were the good times. These were the great times, arguably. And this was Sun and Moon as well. Sword and Shield was coming out at this point, and you were still getting old, discontinued, out of print Sun and Moon booster boxes from 2018 for less than retail. Because the argument that I see a lot is that Japanese resellers facilitate getting Japanese product into Japanese Pokemon card fans. And isn't that what you want as a Pokemon card fan? What, are you trying to deny Japanese Pokemon fans your audience of cards? How dare you? Gatekeeping. Who are you? Who are you to say that? No, before you, it was fine. It was easy. It was good. This price is a function of many things. One is demand. There's more demand for Pokemon cards. So supply, demand, relationship, I get it. Supply and demand, there's 2 things happening. I'm going to say at least there's 2 things happening. One of them is this whole investor thing. The nature of investing puts inorganic pressure on the supply-demand relationship because the supply that is out there is probably enough to satiate the demand of the actual target consumer, which is a Pokemon card collector or a Pokemon card player. Okay, so there's enough product out there to actually satiate the demand of the people that are opening the packs and then putting the cards into circulation and like enabling this whole collector's ecosystem. What there isn't enough demand for, though, is additional pressure put on by people who are investing in Pokemon cards as a long-term thing. And it's not manufactured and sold and distributed to function as a stock. It's sold to function as a collectible card game. That's an argument that people have made a lot, right? But so it's nothing really new. But this demand that's now introduced is like not the demand that the company wants. And it puts all this ridiculous pressure on it. So that is why, like, when I see this supply demand argument, it's like, yes, there is demand. There's a lot of demand, but some of this demand is inorganic, and I don't think Pokemon are ever going to manufacture enough to satiate the people that are investing in it long term. There is no line. You know what I mean? Like for some of those investors, and this isn't a target at any of them, but for some of those investors, there's no line. The more that they print, the cheaper it gets, the more they buy in. It's unwise for a company to then just manufacture to meet that demand that isn't real, right? That is real, but is not demand from a fan. It's risky as hell for them to just print to satiate the investors so that there's enough for the investors that are buying 10 or 20 boxes at a time and the collectors and players. Because at some point, the investors will stop buying it and then there will be excess stock. And that is kind of what happened when Scarlet and Violet just sat on the shelves for that year or two. It was because right as that set came out, Pokemon said, we're going to up the printers, we're going to print a whole bunch, right? And they printed it all. And then because there was so much of it out there, that audience, that demand that they thought was actual true demand from fans, collectors, whatever, which was actually investors, they didn't buy it because it was too cheap and they deemed it an unwise investment. And then when the time was right, they bought it all. And now we're back in this spot where it's like there's not enough supply. Pokemon print more. They're going to do it again. And it's just rinse, repeat. And it's just ridiculous. That is part of why this is as expensive as it is. The other part, and it's a part that I've spoken about in the video. So in this video, I spoke a little bit about the different types of sellers, right? The one that I'm showing on the screen here is, there's manufacturer behind this, but it's distributor to the card store based in Japan to the customer. The other one though is the resellers based one, which is this one. So part of the reason why the price of Rocket is as high as it is and why every box has been as high as it is over the last 6 months is because there are multiple nodes along this distribution method. You have manufacturing, sends it to main distributor. Distributor sends it to a store. For some reason, it gets backdoored out of Japan. One of the reasons why is because by selling out of Japan, Japanese businesses can avoid a 10% tax. They avoid a consumption tax. So there's an incentive for Japanese middlemen to sell out of Japan to different countries. This is pre-tariffs, right? But they still need to take their cut. So they charge to the reseller, which is based out of Japan, most often in this case, who then has to charge their 20% on top of that to you. So there's like a 20 or 30% markup happening here. And then there's another 20 or 30% markup happening here. And then you get it. So you pay this ridiculous markup. In the good old days, right? You just paid the one markup and it was just a rational 10 or 20%. And it was like healthy. Because yeah, you got to pay a markup. You can't as a consumer expect to just buy stuff for retail and get it at wholesale price. No, it's unrealistic. A 50% markup is kind of crazy. I get that happens when there's more demand. To meet the demand, you got to put the price up to slow down the sales, right? A lot of what happened, right, and that's what I was talking about earlier, is that this markup here, right, got greedy and it just got pushed higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And now we're here at this insano price of 500 Australian. I said this a lot in the Poke Guardian podcast. Ultimately, collectors like us are minorities. Collectors like us that don't want to pay these ridiculous prices, that speak out against the practices of resellers and, you know, rock the boat or whatever. At the end of the day, we're a minority. Most people are accepting of the current situation, and just whether it's because they don't know any better or they're a part of it, or because they just simply don't care and they've got more money to warrant, they're basically whales, to warrant doing this kind of stuff. They're the majority. We are definitely the minority. But I like that our minority is like, it is what it is. You know, it's us. I guess the last thing to talk about now is because of these tariffs, if you already paid this as your pre-order, now whether you actually get the order is in question because the tariff is going to get imposed on the thing that you already bought. Like, are you going to pay the extra 24% that is probably going to get pushed onto you? Or is your order now going to get canceled? At the end of the day, yeah, if you're spending that much on one Japanese booster box, dude, just burn your money at that point. That's crazy.